coronavirus pandemic has reshaped every aspect of how our world operates. This obviously also includes education.
Following the adoptions of this measure, schools be suspended until further notice.
I don't think I have learned anything.
Data bundles, the buying of it, it's very expensive.
When coronavirus lockdown comes, my math book is at school, so I forgot the formulas.
The pandemic has come to kick us awake and to increase our speed of attending to the issues of connectivity.
In this documentary, we explore the realities of e-learning during the ongoing state of emergency and analyze strategies geared towards a prosperous and industrialized Namibia as per the objectives of Vision 2030. Since independence, Namibia has been investing between 20 to 25% of its budget in education. Though notable improvements have been made in areas leading towards the obtainment of solid education, unsurmountable challenges still persist around access to education and the quality thereof in many parts of the country. Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic ravaging the world, the challenges seem to have multiplied.
Our parents cannot afford the e-learning equipment. They could maybe just put in the newspaper so that we can afford newspapers. And the newspapers are also costing a lot. $5 is a lot.
Working tirelessly to ease the burden on teachers, learners and communities, the executive directors in government institutes and heads of UN agencies have become busier than ever. They are pushing towards online education in Namibian schools as a solution to disrupted face-to-face learning.
An e-learning system is one element of an education system. Right? So it cannot just stand by itself, but it has to be built in as full and part of a whole system.
Electronic learning, or e-learning as it is also known, has not been broadly integrated in the teaching and learning systems of many schools and universities in Namibia yet. But the government expressed in its national long-term goals that e-learning is a fundamental area for development. During the COVID-19 outbreak, which resulted in a global shutdown of industries, many universities and schools themselves emerged as champions and advocates of online education.
The e-learning initiatives, they were basically born within schools out of their own initiatives. E-learning took place because there are those, young, dynamic, innovative teachers who said, no, we can do it, and they embraced the opportunity while they have been testing and experimenting beforehand already with platforms such as Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. They then, through this, circumstances that were uncalled at that time, unexpected, they then expanded their expertise, and of course it was more like a trial and error.
Renowned secondary schools like Delta in Namibia's capital city were the first to get active. Natasha Ulrich, a life skills teacher here, is one of those who introduced e-learning tools to enable continued education in events where face-to-face studying is interrupted.
One of our teachers decided that we need to be proactive. So we basically got a team of 4 people together that via Skype started making plans of how are we going to deal, what are we going to use if they do make e-learning compulsory. Because obviously we didn't know where this was going and we didn't want to just leave our learners behind. So that task team had 4 teachers and we were in constant communication with the principal. And we looked at the different options that were available. Microsoft 365, Moodle, Google Classroom, and similar learning management systems to utilize during that time. Obviously, cost was a problem. So if you're in Namibia and you very quickly have to organize something, you don't necessarily have the funds for it. So we started experimenting with Google Classroom. And when we got together for the first time as a school for meetings, we did actually show the teachers how it works. We introduced them to the concept, and even the old teachers very quickly got used to how it works. And that was actually quite good. So what you usually do when you want to navigate to Google Classroom is you type into your search bar, and it will show you the results. We chose Google Classroom in the beginning because it was very easy to navigate. It has limited amounts of functions that you can do from the front end side, from some of the user side, and that means you don't get confused. You don't have to look for things. And because of that, we chose this, because we do have some teachers who are a bit afraid of actually using technology. They are not comfortable with newer technologies, and they're scared of doing something wrong. And in our case, it was very easy to introduce. We had a meeting where we set up a screen and they could see what we're doing. We showed them what the buttons do, and that was really easy for most of the teachers to use. Now in this case, I'm already logged in, so it pops up like that. But here would be an account verification. So it says, verify that this is you, make sure that you are on the right email address, and then it would take you to a section where you type in your password. This is a password that you set up yourself. Okay, now if you are in your classes as a teacher, you can name your classrooms in different manners. Now we usually divide them into their normal grades like A, B, C, D, just because it makes it easier to manage smaller groups. Now, as you can see, our penetration is actually quite good. We tend to have 36 to 37 students in a class, and you can see that our learners are actually quite involved in their classrooms. Now, these are all the classes that you as a teacher would have set up. The biggest problem we had was connectivity for learners when they were on the farm, in the village, or outside of the big towns. So some of the learners had to actually travel from the village to the town to get internet. That was a bit of a challenge. Other people use data, and fortunately, Classroom doesn't use that much data if you do not work with videos too much. So if you upload exercises and questionnaires, that worked all right. Some of the learners were approached through WhatsApp. The parents were informed through WhatsApp, and some of the teachers also then wrote SMSs and made phone calls. Now, out of all of our learners, I would estimate that about at least 75 to 80% did end up having access. They made a plan somehow. And the rest of them, we put learning packages together once a week that they could pick up, and then we would just inform them via SMS what to do with them. Yeah, you guys are amazing.
My name is Konile Shegaya, 17 years old at Delta Secondary School. I'm grade 12. Google Classroom has really been efficient for us because we've been able to do more schoolwork and just keep the morale for school there. During this whole lockdown, for me, it's been very helpful.
The advantages of Google Classroom is that we can do it in our own time and pace, and we don't really have to wake up very early and be very tired and stuff.
Like when I was trying to load my German oral email on it, it was like saying try again and try again. Maybe they could make some modifications, and other than that, I really have no complaints. It's an opportunity for us to learn. Even now that we're at school, it's just to get more work and to get. And also the one advantage also would be that if you missed a class or if you missed something, then you can also access the information. Like it will not be like you missed and then you have to find ways to catch up. You can actually go to Google Classrooms and access that information and get the correct answers for activities and stuff like that.
In the Havana informal settlement northwest of Windhoek, we meet Ndilimeke and Rovisa, two best friends who attend junior secondary school in Katutura.
we're not doing e-learning now, because I'm just going to do that papers from school. But that helping that is going to be hard. Some at the same time is good and at the same time is good. And some of us are not even very good in math, geography, and physics. And I'm struggling at least. My cousin is helping me some subjects. Math is going to be hard for me because I forget my formulas. Because my class teacher told me, Kama, we must wash 4 meters from my hand. That is good. The school starts about to. When I'm hearing about online program, I usually go to my friends and ask the information. And I used to contact with my classmates to ask either they are going to get their paper or they are doing online. Usually I got an information that people are going to get paper from school, and the day that I went, I didn't find teachers. I went back home. Next Friday I went to school and I got my papers. So it seems for me difficult because some things we didn't do it.
My name is Migonda. I'm a learner at Emmanuel Shifidi in grade 10. Due to this corona, I was a little bit wondering, I'm no more going to school. I'm going to repeat grade 10 next year. But when it comes in the middle, my teacher plans to tell us we must try to use e-learning. Then I don't have a smartphone. I asked my mom to help me with the smartphone, and every week she struggles to buy airtime for her to do for me away. My mom is no more going at work. She was retrenched due to corona because she was the only parent that can help me. My father is a domestic work. He only goes at work 3 times a week. So now it's difficult for me to find for my dad to buy for me a smartphone. We don't have electricity in our house because he have to buy food, do this because he's the only one to find money in the house. My mom is no more going at work. Nenge 37 the two answer? Sorry, 37 is the answer.
We are also aware of that the access to e-learning is not there for every learner. That means it's only currently a small group of learners who benefit from that model. So what, as the ministry, we advocate is that beside the initiative of e-learning, schools and teachers still have to prepare learning packages. And that is, as they have started to resume duty, teachers were engaged developing learning packages. And our minister has been visiting schools and has witnessed that teachers do develop and has praised teachers. And we do reach out and acknowledge that commitment of teachers to develop material. So once material is developed, of course, it can be put online. And in this initiative of supporting our learners under adverse circumstances, which could be lockdown or, that face-to-face teaching and learning is interrupted again, we have, together with NAMCOL, the Namibia College of Open Learning, which primarily has its mandate for the reset candidates, those learners who have not achieved in their first attempt. It used to be that catch-up mechanisms for them. But as they have been producing online resource material and have that interactive platform already called NotesMaster, we have been teaming up with NAMCOL to strengthen that delivery mode. And in that process, more than 200 teachers have been recruited, volunteered to develop learning content. So we will have to make that more accessible. And yes, whereas it is right now not a policy position that every learner must have access to a smartphone or a tablet or an iPad or a laptop. That is not yet a policy position because, yes, we have limited financial resources. And for example, what would fall into this bracket is the textbook budget, is the textbook or the learning support materials, which would be a laptop, a Kindle, an iPad or a smartphone, could fall into that category. But we are yet to revise our policies.
Acknowledging these challenges, it is important to note that Namibia was once a leader in ICT development in Africa, but the country's ranking dropped due to, among others, seemingly inactive policies concerning access for all and affordability, as well as a lack of human resources.
Namibia has invested a lot, from the marine cables connecting Namibia to the large, I would say, IT infrastructure or internet infrastructure, from the expansion of the connectivity here in Namibia. These are investments that are made that should support, but in addition, other systems can support. But you need to bring in here also private sectors.
Our Harambee Prosperity Plan target was 80%. We are at 83% on 3G currently, and at 34% on 4G. But our target is to reach 95% countrywide broadband coverage by the year 2023-2024 financial year.
As it stands, Namibian towns are at different levels in terms of their COVID-19 infection rates, whereas in some areas, the ministry has lifted the ban and some children have and will be returning to nurseries and schools for face-to-face learning.
We have got courses which are very much laboratory intensive. So these courses, students need to have hands-on skills where they have to do things and we have to teach them certain skills they have to apply when they go to industry. Like I just mentioned, we have got a Department of Health Sciences. These students are going to work with patients. And when they work with patients, they need to have certain skills which they've acquired here. And so some of those skills, you cannot basically simulate them online. You have to have the student in front of you, go in there and teach them to do specific things that they are going to apply. So when COVID hit, we have got a challenge where now we cannot now simulate those aspects. So we need the students here. And I'm happy that with the current status quo, we have already managed to put together a program where we are going to have them back on campus when the conditions are right, based on what the bosses in management say. We're going to have them here and we're going to do block modules for those so that we attend to those critical hands-on skills they need to do.
Despite the gradual opening of educational facilities, others are preparing for the unforeseen. The Namibia University of Science and Technology is one among those whose learning and teaching unit did not cease operations. They invested thoughtfully in the upgrading of their e-learning system.
We cannot just think in the current pandemic. We have to think post-COVID-19. And like I said, this is not the first pandemic, it will not be the last. And we are staying in a country where because of climate changes, there's drought, there's floods. And we cannot every time find ourselves in a position whereby we are not ready. So we have to build on our successes, what we have achieved during this time. And remote teaching and learning is here to stay. And I'm not saying that we must replace the face-to-face teaching in its entirety, but the two needs to complement each other.
Mr. Lumamu, can you see me in the video? Can you see me, Mr. Lumamu? Okay, so it works well, the feedback works well. So I'm just going to replicate this drawing that we have there, sort of the system that's indicated in the book.
Needless to say, e-learning comes with advantages and disadvantages.
The system we are calling, we are using MS Teams, where we are able to talk with our students, like almost face to face. One of the things we have realized, and I was actually mentioning to someone this morning, is that students, you can tell, students log in, you see them there, but they're not communicating. They go up, most probably they've gone to do their own things, but you can see they're showing presence there. And how I've caught that is sometimes I'll ask a question and you'll find it's the same students answering. Then you look at who is online and you tell them so and so, can you answer this? And you can't hear anything. So you know that student is not there. They could even be asleep for all you know. They just log in and then So that in itself, when we had face-to-face, you can see who doesn't answer. There are students who really are not talkative. So what we were able to do is you're able to, tell them so and so, can you tell me something about this? Now it's a bit challenging.
Engineering, and I think most science-based programs, poses an additional challenge to e-learning in that you can't simply give the students slides. You can't just simply talk to them, give them sound bites, for instance. You have to actually explain problems to them, solve problems, mathematical problems on a blackboard or whiteboard, and that takes some doing. And to do that online is quite a challenge. And then furthermore, assessments are also difficult because you want the students to be able to write equations on paper, and you have to look through their methods of solving a problem and then mark accordingly, which is different from, say, human sciences.
In times of financial stress and the diversion of resources to address the coronavirus pandemic, the government is looking at remedial means to address existing challenges.
Students will have access to surmountable amount of capacity to enable students to download material for their studies, for their research, for engagement with their lecturers, for responding to assignments.
We have a core area which is the education and skills development, where UNESCO is actually chairing the working group. We have a sub-pillar on education and skills of the UNPAF. We call it UNPAF, the UN Partnership Framework supporting NDP 5. UNESCO is sitting here supporting as a chair of the education and skills. But also we are involved in other areas.
The ministry, through this task force that I referred to earlier, the e-learning task force, they are exploring, they are actually negotiating in depth with the telecommunication providers models of this nature. So that is what they are engaged in currently. The costing for this altogether, it depends on which way we go.
It has been resolved by the Ministry of Higher Education through UNAM and NAST, and particularly the Namibia Student Financial Assistance Fund, to make gadgets accessible and available cost effectively to those learners who may not have the means to buy laptops and gadgets of similar nature that will assist them in benefiting and capitalizing on the available connectivity.
UNESCO, we through a cooperation with China, right? We have implemented here a project that supports the development of what you call a Copano. A Copano is a platform, is an e-platform where we are expecting and we are pushing, trying to have the teachers to come in and collaborate. But this Copano can also be used as a tool for, indeed, to be expanded to serve for the e-learning.
While some believe that the unplanned and rapid move to online learning with no training, insufficient bandwidth, and little preparation will result in a poor user experience that is unconducive to sustained growth, others believe that a new hybrid model of education will emerge with significant benefits.
I think the e-learning system is mostly designed for the privileged.
There's a lot of integrity issues. And I'll tell you that because I have looked at, I've given a number of assignments to some of the classes before, and you can see how students perform. A student who gets 40 out of 100 or gets 50 out of 100, and suddenly you're giving them an assignment online and they're getting 80, you know there's an issue of integrity. So those are the issues that are tricky about online teaching. How are we going to figure out how to deal with the issues of integrity?
But I feel if we embrace it, looking at where we are now, even after COVID, this might be the best platform for students to learn. My thought process is coming from this end. If you look at a lot of people in this country have gotten degrees through online learning. If you look at the models that universities like UNISA and other UK universities are using, they teach students in Namibia to get a degree online and you have never been to the UK.
My concern is if there would be, again, a national lockdown, or if there would be, if schools would be closed, that would of course have very adverse effects on the examinations. We don't want that. We want to find a new normal. That is the position of the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture.
E-learning is possible. It cannot be 100%. We need to be thrusted into embracing e-learning. We have no turning back. The tide is pushing us in that direction. It's not a question of choice, but we know there will be those that will be challenged in terms of access to e-services, to e-learning. Rome was not built in one day. We have started and we are marching in that direction. So we need to harness our resolve as a nation and not to think twice, but think once and move forward. One day we will all be smiling with no one feeling left out.